Hi, everybody. This is Jacob Stoops. I am here with Mr. Matt Osuch, VP of Audience Development and SEO at Ziff Davis. How's it going, Matt?
Going great, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And lo and behold, another former colleague. I am just wrangling everybody that I used to work with and forcing them to jump on late at night and talk to me about life and SEO. So I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on.
I've been enjoying the podcast for the last couple of days, Jake. I have to say I've been binge watching or binge listening. And I think it's great to hear from some of the team members that we've worked with in the past and also people I don't know and hear their stories. I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's been really cool. For me it's been fun to get the podcast up and running, and I think getting to the point where I feel like I've got enough content to actually start promoting it myself. I've been kind of keeping it on the down low until I work out, the kinks, so to speak. People have been sharing their individual episodes kind of separately, but haven't promoted it yet. That's going to start soon, and I think people are actually beginning to engage with and enjoy the content, which was something that I didn't know if people would like it going in. And I think my audience is niche enough to where maybe they'll like it.
Absolutely.
Anyways, enough about me. Matt, let's talk about you. So who is Matt Osuch as a person? What do you do? Who are you?
I feel like the Renaissance man of digital marketing that just happens to specialize in SEO. First and foremost, I'm a father. I'm a husband. I have a 6-year-old daughter turning 6 in a week and a 3-year-old son. And my wife, I love dearly. They keep me happy and insane in the late hours of the night or in the morning. And I think that's one of the things that I used to think of myself as a digital marketer first, and never really thought of myself. I thought I could be a family man, but I never thought that would be my primary function in life. And I'm happy to say that is what it's turned into in the last couple of years. My background is that I went to Villanova University for computer science. Before I went to Villanova and had decided that computer science was the thing I wanted to do, I worked as an intern at a small digital marketing and dial-up company, local dial-up.
Woo-hoo.
Oh yeah, 56.6, watch out. And did a little bit of tech support there, learned a little bit of the ropes of what basic HTML was and some very small digital marketing, or it was, back in the day in the late 90s, digital marketing was tough to come by as a profession, just getting its real roots in the ground. And decided I wanted to go to Villanova for computer science after a semester. Went into the computer science realm and enjoyed it, had a great time with it, and ended up, after school, going to a small startup in financial services, who I'm actually consulting for now, which is great to get back to seeing, the baby that you set out into the world a long time ago, coming back around and applying new strategies to it. But my foundation came as working with that first startup. I was the general webmaster. I had just finished computer digital marketing, digital webmaster classes and writing, and more of a programmer kind of background. I was doing front-end, back-end design, development, database administration, and whatever digital marketing was back in 99, 2000, 2001. And I got approached by this snake oil salesman, right, Jake? This snake oil salesman called an SEO, and I was an SEO agency. Oh well, Mr. SEO agency, sure, do that free assessment and take me out to lunch. I don't mind. So it turns out after a week of them doing their assessment, they came back, and they were just a startup. They were only about 4 people. They said, Matt, we really like what you've done with the website. I was like, yeah, well, I'm sure everybody does this. You got to do it to get in front of search engines. And I've been doing that job of general webmaster for about 4 or 5 years. And they were like, no, not everybody does this. Like, no, I don't believe you. Everybody's got to be this diligent if they want to get in front of search engines or Google. Well, it was only Google at the time. And they're like, no, in fact, we're really impressed with your work. We'd really love if you came on board and worked with us rather than us working with you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know. So everybody does this. Doesn't everybody? You know, no, we'll show you a couple clients. We'll have you moonlight for a little bit, do a little bit of work. So I did. Little did I know I was good at SEO. I had just been doing what I thought was diligent work as a webmaster, designer, and developer. And it was actually earning position and rank and traffic and search, and started doing it for some other clients in the automotive business, and moved over to that agency, a smaller agency that was only 4 people at the time. I was like the 5th guy in the door, and really excelled. I was a developer / SEO, and little did I know I could also sell SEO. I developed a personality with my boss that was nurturing nature, kind of like SEO friendly first kind of point of view, not that snake oil salesman thing that we always talk about in the industry. And we grew the company from 5 people to 45 people in a matter of 5 years. Had a bunch of clients, I think over 100 clients or accounts. And progressed through that for about 6 years. Wanted to grow even further. I had read for years about this company called Avenue A Razorfish. I read about them in Wired, and got really excited when I was approached by one of their sister companies, Rosetta. And one of my favorite words in digital marketing, Jake, I don't know, maybe you've heard of this, recontextualization.
Really?
When Avenue A and Razorfish, when the head of their company was interviewed on what digital marketing is, what is it they do, and they said recontextualization. And the interviewer was like, what are you talking about? That is absolutely crazy. So, I got it on board with you and the team. Very happy to work on that account for a while. And then made some iterations, made some changes and moves over the next couple of years, and ended up at Ziff Davis recently, about 2 years ago, focusing on a very large group of publishers. Some great names like PCMag, IGN, Internet Gaming Network if you're a gamer, What to Expect When Expecting if you've had kids, Everyday Health, offers.com, blackfriday.com. And now it's morphed into this thing where, at the agency before, I was like the head of digital, which was paid search, SEO, content writing, and dev. And I was very focused when I went to Rosetta on just SEO. It was kind of like stay in your lane. And that always bugged the crap out of me. I was like, no, analytics, no, design, no, let's touch everything. Yeah. I was the scope creep guy, and I still am today. I credit that to my previous boss. And now at Ziff, we operate as if we're an internal agency, kind of helping all the different brands from top down as industry best practices. So I've been also getting into audience development as far as demand generation for social amplification, paid traffic creation, and it's really been great. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I can't ask for more. People pay me for what I do, and when I like it.
So I have it on good authority, and by good authority I mean because you're my Facebook friend, that you love Star Wars.
I would say
about your love of Star Wars.
Look, I did not name my son Luke because I like Star Wars so much. I know that's the assumption that everybody has about my love of Star Wars. I happen to name my son Luke because my name is Matthew. My brother's name is Mark. My brother-in-law's name is John.
Oh, the Bible, eh? The 4 horsemen.
Yeah, and I'm not even that religious. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the saints, the apostles, I thought that went well. It just so happened that I love Star Wars. I am a big Star Wars geek fanboy, if you will. But I will say that I'm not the most extreme geek. In fact, the most recent movies that came out, I'm lucky I caught it that it was still in the theater.
But you did catch it.
Oh yeah. That go. But I didn't want to go with the crowds and masses and be uncomfortable in the stadium seating. I wanted to really enjoy the experience. So yes, I've had a love of sci-fi and Star Wars and Star Trek. I credit my father with that. He was a big scientist. Pharmacy. My mom's a nurse. It's just I love all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because it's actually a little bit fresh in my mind, in that my in-laws have recently asked me to bring over Star Wars, and because they have either never saw it or don't recollect it, and I'm, because of all of the new developments versus the prequels, and I have some of it and not all of it. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Do you want the original? Do you want the prequels? Do you want the new movies? And then they're
Please be more specific.
yeah, and I'm like, well, do I explain the order, how it really goes, or like how it goes sequentially, or do you want the 1970s movies, which are actually 4, 5, and 6, and then they made this new movie, which is 7, but then they made Rogue One, which is like 4.5.
Oh, it's like 4.9.
Great movie, by the way. I finally saw Rogue One the other day. Awesome movie. Really, really enjoyed it. The best.
My wife wanted me to classify it. She's like, well, where does this fall and everything? I'm like, it's 3.9.
Yeah, right.
It's like 1, 2, 3, 3.9, 4. Because it happens almost
I got it wrong. Yeah,
hours. It happens almost hours after or before 4 hits.
And then you have like all of the cartoons that have developed in the entire kind of canon and history and everything that is kind of pulled together from the entire Star Wars universe. I find fascinating, and I've been also getting into with Game of Thrones coming back in April. I don't know if you watched that. I've been kind of binge watching Game of Thrones, like fan theories. There are a lot of YouTube channels that talk about Game of Thrones, and there are a lot of YouTube channels that are about to be shit out of luck when Game of Thrones goes off the air. They've got, I don't know how much revenue coming in and how many visits, and there's nothing else to talk about. Although they are ordering a pilot for a prequel series, but for the most part, nothing more to talk about after the 6 episodes coming in April. But
yeah, I mean, having gone from a small startup to a startup agency to a large agency with amazing enterprise level clients to a large publisher group, I've experienced a lot of different variations in content creation, and I agree with you. I get a lot of those Google Chrome suggested stories to read. And because of the things I do, like what to expect when expecting, I get a lot of maternity stuff all of a sudden. Or if I'm working on another brand for a couple of weeks, I get a bunch of tech stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've been getting a lot of, for some reason, I've been working on IGN, which does a lot of gaming and movies, and a lot of Avenger like theories. And I am the one person that stays completely away from any spoilers, theories, fan fictions. I want canon only. And don't surprise me. I mean, even the trailer that was on the Super Bowl, I was like, do I want to see it? Okay, it's fine. Yeah. I don't follow the Marvel Universe or DC Universe very closely, but the movies I've enjoyed very much.
So let me ask you this. Let me tie this discussion all the way back in now. You've got several really large publications that are churning out content almost nonstop. From an SEO and a marketing perspective, you've got not just one bear, you've got, as I'm counting them, you've got like 5 different bears that you've got to wrangle and get the SEO strategy going in the right direction, get the marketing and the audience strategy going in the right direction. Like, how the hell do you do that?
Well, you teach a man to fish. I think that you don't have to touch every single strategy every day, thank goodness. We do have individuals that are extremely skilled at those levels in the editorial departments that run in different patterns. I know a lot of the clients we've worked with before have not had an editorial chief or editorial lead that has always been either present at the brand or not. But the majority of the publications, because they're publishers, their core is content creation. PCMag, IGN, What to Expect, Everyday Health, Offers.com, Black Friday. I'm trying to think of others. Those sites have been writing, and writing was at their core. So it's unlucky that these individuals are open to receiving education on a quarterly basis or annual basis on the newest SEO tactics, and they're able to take that information, and we also make tools internally at our own internal agency kind of view to maximize Google Trends or RSS feeds or BuzzSumo feeds or whatever the newest tool set happens to be that we can import, create an automated dashboard out of, and output that data to them on a daily or weekly basis so they stay on the cutting edge of where content is growing and what my boss calls hockey sticking, taking that rocket plunge upward in interest to stay in front of them. Another brand, Mashable, Mashable.com, that is, always on cutting edge of pop news and culture and tech. And it's really amazing how those teams kind of keep up with the material. So a data-centric editorial lead and directors and editors will do the job for you as long as you also help them as much as you can with the data access that you have availability to.
So let me ask you this. I've got a lot of questions.
Okay.
One, when it comes to teaching a man or woman to fish, right? The old saying. Question number one is, how do you do that? And two is, okay, how do you hold each other accountable, right? Because if they're not following your best practices and results aren't there, you can point the finger at them. But if you're not giving them the right best practices, they can point the finger at you. So how do you hold each other accountable to make sure that you're doing what you need to do from an SEO and a marketing perspective, in that your best practices are being implemented, and how do they hold you accountable to making sure that you're giving them cutting edge advice?
Sure. So I think we collectively have two goals in mind. They're cheeky goals, if you will. One is keeping your job, and two is keeping your boss's job. So you want to enable yourself to meet the company's goals and expectations, and you want to enable your boss to be able to say, great job, we're meeting the company's goals and expectations, or you're enabling them to do their job easier, faster, quicker. So my boss is the head of audience development pretty much for all of Ziff Davis, and we have company goals that we need to achieve, and it's helping those teams individually dive into the striking distance content, the gap analysis of themselves versus competitors on major topics or like topics in the industry that are growing. So as far as staying on goal, we do look at rankings. We do look at volume of inbound traffic from SEO and pieces of content being written, but quality pieces, the quality of that content. And then making sure that everybody from myself, from the SEO team to the editorial team, is keeping in touch with the best practices of industry standards of what people are saying in the industry. It is my job to focus on, with other SEOs on the team that work in parallel with me and on other brands, to stay informed in the industry, to keep up with the latest information that's coming out of tests that people are doing other than us or that we're doing. And seeing, okay, what is getting into the quick answer? I have so much data available to me. It's ridiculous because with the number of brands and the verticals that they're in, that they differ in, I've got at least 10 to 15 domains that are in completely different verticals that I could analyze, and I do track over rankings, over like a search metric SEO visibility scores, over fluctuations in SEO. I actually am able to tell you when an SEO ranking factor or algorithm, not a factor in particular, but an algorithm has occurred, an update has occurred, because I have a dashboard for 15 very large million page view daily domains. I look at that dashboard every day, and when I wake up in the morning, I've collected Google Analytics from those accounts using the Google Sheets plugin that automatically updates, also integration with Google Search Console and a whole bunch of other tools. And I get to see the red or green fluctuations that I've personally developed and designed some of those dashboards in conjunction with other team members to say, what's the pulse? What changed? What site section changed? What template types changed? What's unique about this template type on this site that didn't change over there? And it's that scientist point of view of how the world is changing and observing that change to say, oh, this one website won while these three other sites lost. What are the commonalities and differences between those? And it's always what you hope that you get out of, like a Barry Schwartz or a Matt Cutts or Danny Sullivan or something on search engine land, that somebody would say, these 20 domains did this. Mm-hmm. This one site section, we saw a trend in that. I actually have access to that data along with 3 or 4 other, director level SEO team members that we can go in when there's a big fluctuation that occurs. And I could probably, I caught it a couple times in the last couple months where I said something to my team before it came out on Search Engine Land or on Search Engine Roundtable. And I was really excited about that personally.
So coming out of that, something I've been running into personally, and I'm sure you've run into in the past, is in the minds of the people that we work with. And I'm thinking mostly on my side to clients. I think the content wheel and the content process is a little bit broken, right? And the reason I think that is because of the way that sometimes content is getting sold to people, whether it be us or somebody else selling content to people from the outside and then us hearing about it secondhand, or the way that customers are coming to us thinking about how they want us to do content. And what I mean by that is they're coming at us and saying, hey Jake, I need X pieces of content per month, or I need I mean, a lot of it's that I need a certain quantity of content per month, or I need to do 8 infographics, or whatever the case may be, 8 graphics, or 8 white papers, or hey, I need a bunch of case studies, and they'll come to us and say, hey, give me some pricing for that, and I kind of have to say, like, why do you need those things? And why is the number 8? Why do you need 8? Why not 2? Why not 10? And a lot of times I feel like I have to back people off and say, no. We need to, if we're just starting this relationship, we don't know your website. We need to audit it. And then we'll tell you, do you need to create more content? Do you need to revamp existing content? So on and so forth. And then the other thing that I see is when they do get to that place where they're creating content, right, they're actually at the executional phase, the process typically goes like this. I've researched this keyword, I've created an article, and then I send it to my SEO to optimize, and people can't see me doing my little air quotes, optimize. And it's like, well, no, like people, you've got to understand that, like, if you're trying to rank for a certain thing, whatever it is, and you write an article that is fundamentally horrible, or is not in depth enough, there's no amount of optimizing or putting in keywords or sprinkling my magic fairy dust that can help that article rank. And in fact, what needs to happen is you need to change the process. And so, okay, these are the things that I've been running into. And I'm wondering if this is something that, because you're doing content at great scale, that you've either run into in the past or that you're running into now, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so at the agency level, I think something that I always knew from my first agency, PCG Digital, as selling, I was not just the SEO and a digital person. I was co-selling with the head of the company on new accounts. And then when we moved into Rosetta and Razorfish, being part of that sales process from the beginning, the initial start of the conversation, some agencies, some teams don't think to include the SEO guy that's going to be doing the work as part of the sales process. But that SEO person creating strategy and setting out goals from the beginning, I think helps to start the relationship properly, so that we're not expecting X number of pieces as delivery. We're expecting performance. And also something that someone in the industry taught me was, you're not an SEO. You're a marketer that specializes in a particular channel. And that marketing needs to tie back to their goals, their personal goals at work, their boss's goals, and the company's goals. And if you're not serving those things with the channel that you're optimizing for, whatever it happens to be, it could be TV, radio, print, SEO, paid search, social. It's not the things that you produce, but the end result of those things. And so setting the expectation early in conversation is making sure that we're not hitting a production number. We're not producing cars. We're not a factory line, but we're trying to create quality that drives the end goal, whether that be traffic and conversions and sales, or something else. That we want that to happen. Okay, what should be the ideation, the creation of that material and that media type that fits what we want the end goal to be? Because we're the SEO agency or the SEO person, we're going to start to think about the tools in our shed, our toolbox, whatever it is, that enables those things to happen. Is it a site redesign? Is it tech audit? Is it something wrong with the domain technically? Those 3 pillars of SEO, right? You go back to those 3 pillars of content, accessibility / technical, and authority / don't everybody say it at the same time, backlinks. You don't want those to be the things, but the pillar that they should all go up to, the roof over everyone's head, is the money that it drives, or the goal that you achieved. So yeah, I don't think that there can be a number of content pieces, but if you set out an editorial gap analysis, or an editorial striking distance, or you know that X amount of your articles that were ranking well and had traffic 2 years ago, but you haven't updated them and you've let them go orphaned on the site in pagination, you can quantify the number of pieces that you have to update and the amount of time it takes an editorial or a writer person, an individual, to go back and do that, and those are your numbers on delivery. How quickly do you want to get those things done and start to see improvements to your site? That's how you break down the hours and the delivery pieces to me. There's other things that people can do, which, in the last year I've been starting to work on. What other media types can I amplify to get traffic to my site? And that's one of the, I know you've been talking about it, knowledge bombs that I wanted to drop on some people. The knowledge bomb is SEO is not the bomb. And I'm probably one of the last people you expected to hear that from. But traffic generation is our game. We're a channel, and there's so many other channels. They could be spending their money somewhere else. Sure. They could be spending it on TV, and the selling point is always so difficult for SEOs, right? Well, how much more traffic are you going to get me?
I don't know.
I don't know. Let's guess. Let's guess together. Right. But you use your math, you use your experience in the industry, maybe a couple of tools, some click-through rate assessments, but you don't know if you're going to rank number 2 or number 10. And you embark on that adventure together. So
in SEO, right, a lot of times we're focusing on keywords and topics and things and search volume. And with the types of sites you manage, there's an element of churn in new topics that you haven't even thought of that are coming right around the corner probably all the time, that just crop up out of nowhere. So how do you balance having a very targeted strategy going after very specific things that you want to rank for with the churn that you have to maintain and always uncovering those new topics?
There's a certain amount of deviation from the editorial keyword selection process that you have to take into account. Are you hitting the hottest, latest, greatest thing that's going to be in the news cycle for a short amount of time? Or are you targeting evergreen terminology and content to a focused audience that is your core set of terms? So, are you a gaming website that talks through the latest news on a game release? Sure, everybody's going to be looking for it, but it's a hot flash in the pan and then it backs off. So don't put way too much effort in link building and site navigation creation and internal backlinking effort toward that, because it's going to hit the Google News cycle. It's going to be in and out in a day or two, and that search topic may go away. But the longer play is, if that game is dropping in April, can you get video assets? Can you get trailers? Can you get walkthroughs? Can you get all of the rest of the ecosystem that that's going to come with a game? Characters and hit points and strategies in that game, controllers, and how it's going to be different on different consoles. Think about the long-term goals, but get in early. And we have team members at PCMag and Mashable that are working on 5G and 6G. Sure, they're pie-in-the-sky technologies in the future, but can we own that space, early on enough where we become the asset, the known property for that terminology ahead of time? So I think staying ahead of the curve is kind of difficult. But you have to anticipate what's going to happen in the next generation of that conversation around that terminology so that you can continue to capture traffic as that topic evolves.
So how do you anticipate it? What do you do to anticipate? Is it Google Trends? Is it something else? Do you just have put on your magic Swami hat?
I'm going to say that it's actually not my responsibility at that point. It is left to the editorial chiefs and leads. I would love to take credit for it. But those individuals at the brand level are so knowledgeable about their craft and their particular segment of the news and industry that I can't get ahead of them. The way that they get ahead of it is using some of our tools like Google Trends. But lately, we've been doing a little bit of market research on let's say in the gaming industry, app research. There are app research tools and app store tools that help you to determine what's the hottest app in growth and downloads, and on what operating system. And we've been looking into that information to see if that can inform editorial.
One more kind of in the weeds update or question, and then I want to back out just a little bit. So we've talked a lot about content, but we all know that technical is more foundational in my opinion, in terms of you can have great content, but if nobody can see it, does it really matter? It's like if a tree falls in the woods. So you've got a bunch of different properties to manage technical, and I'm assuming there's a big team of developers making updates to these websites all the time. So how do you manage to maintain and improve the technical framework and put out fires as I'm sure they arise?
Yeah, well, I continue to be impressed by the level of internal automation that some teams have in knowing best practices, but it's ongoing training and knowledge sharing throughout our teams, the different silos of team members and their skill sets on what SEO best practices are and are not. Doing systemic and scheduled checkups on best practices, and knowing and finding out person to person, when is there a CMS change? When is there a platform change? When are you doing a redesign? We need to have our butts in the seats at the round table to help you shape that conversation to make sure we don't go in the wrong direction from step 2, step 3, step 4, and then we're off a cliff. I know that's been the case of several clients that I had in the past when we were at Razorfish and Rosetta and PCG in my previous agency, that they had already decided on a tech stack. They were already doing Angular, and that was going forward, whether we liked it or not. And when we got in, we were about a year and a half into that company already using Angular, and we had to have them stop, rewrite the CMS that they were using or the output they were utilizing to get these parts and pieces and pages of the website to be functioning correctly. It was nice that they had these transitions. It was nice that there was session tracking, or there was, it didn't feel like there was a page transition. Wonderful. But that did not serve the ultimate purpose, which was driving traffic back to the website, getting conversions, getting acquisition, and getting people to convert. The user interface is very important, but it's also important for it to be found and discoverable. So having people in with boots on the ground, letting them and reminding them that the heads of the teams, that they should source our team members for technical when they come up with new ideas, but also and when they're building new products, and also when they're considering just a timely refresh of the site. We go out and we crawl the site. I will give a huge shout out to Deep Crawl, a terrific tool that I continue to use. It's my number one tool that I utilize. They are not paying me to say that, because it is so helpful to me. In the audits that I've done over the last 2 years at the company, several of the brands that I've used the tool on have seen, not because of the tool, but because of what I got out of the tool, corrections to tens of thousands of pages that I would not have been able to scale. I might have been able to do with like a Screaming Frog, but the consolidation and the time that it would have taken, and the locking of my computer that it might have taken, because I don't have, I don't have a gig of, gigs and gigs of RAM. I'll do an initial crawl on Screaming Frog just to test out a site to make sure there's no rabbit holes that the crawler goes down, know to exclude those sections of the site, and then run a full deep crawl on a site. And I find some really great tactics and opportunities there.
So what I'm boiling a lot of that down to, and we've talked about this in past episodes, especially when we talk about the relationship between you as the SEO or marketer and the developer and how that can sometimes be strained. So what I'm getting is that you've developed a lot of trust.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of trust between myself and developers. I come from that computer science. Yeah. I come from that computer science. You're in
each other's hands, basically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Your livelihood.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, how do you get somebody's buy-in? Well, it's your job and their boss's job, and everybody needs to have a job. We don't want to lose our jobs. So I think it's the fact that I have that formal computer science training and background. I can call polite bullshit on people when I know that they're saying something that would have confused the product and the client and the account people. But when you got to me, when the product person came to me and said, Matt, is this the right thing that we're doing for this tool, this new thing we're launching? And I say, no, actually, that's not SEO friendly. You should do it in this way. They bring those points back to the dev team, and the dev team goes, well, I don't know. I'm not too sure. That doesn't sound like something we could do. We all get in a room together. Magically, Matt's introduced to the team, and his background becomes apparent that he was also a developer and can write the same code that you can, not as quickly, but in some capacity. And it's like, oh, yeah, you know what? We probably could do it that way. I never thought of it that way. And yeah, it is important that this page is discoverable and whatnot. So that really helps me out a lot, getting into those technical conversations.
Awesome. So let's back out of that, and I want to focus a little bit more on you.
Oh no.
Successes. Big success.
One of my first mid-enterprise level clients was a pet food company when I was at my first agency. And I was working with the development team, and I was always trying to be spontaneous in the ideas that we would bring to market. It was the first enterprise level client that we ever had, a very large monthly retainer. And we came up with this wild and crazy idea. They were trying to rank really well for fresh pet food category terminology, healthy, fresh, whatnot. It was a developing category, but it was something that people in a niche market were definitely looking for. But we didn't have a good content creation point of view, because really, what can you do if you were a Purina or a Meow Mix or something like that? So an interesting tactic we took was, what kind of data do you have about your company? What kind of data do you have about your product? We found out that they had a great list of distribution to all these pet companies that they went to, the pet supply stores that were even small little chains on the corner, the corner of Main Street. But these companies, these small businesses, did not have their own websites and weren't performing well or didn't have any digital marketing at the time. So if someone was looking for fresh pet food, we did a database explosion where we created like a subdomain of all the places you could find this fresh pet food in stock, in store. Not a search by zip code, because that would have required a search engine to understand and input a zip code into a search field or a form and submit and get an output. That was a purpose of the data, but that was not the end goal. So we created like an HTML sitemap of an output of that data. And it was my first big success in SEO as like a really interesting tactic and strategy, thinking outside the box other than writing blog posts and creating pages, where this templated system outputted 3 or 4 different levels of pages of state, city, store, and it created almost like a yellow pages listing site of places that carried fresh pet food by this brand. And we saw an increase of overall traffic, I think at the time, of like 25 or 30% of generic traffic, that somebody was looking for the name of a pet store, and they got to our page because maybe the pet store didn't have a page, and they learned about the product first, before learning about the pet store and how to get there and what the address was and the phone number and call to see if they're open. So it was really great experiment, and it turned out really, really well. Another thing in the last couple of years that we've had a lot of success on is the cleanup of dead, low-quality, thin content in mass, whether it be outdated or the deep crawl system provides me with that report that says thin content or low page size, I believe it might be, in mass understanding. Okay, how much traffic does that represent to the site? And can we just cut those pages out, or should we refresh them and expand the size of those pages? Is the CMS outputting tens of thousands of repetitive blank pages, which we found was the case, and modifying those? So doing large technical audits like that was very helpful. And then content refreshes of previously successful pieces, expanding their size, understanding the size of competitors' material, what's winning in search results, and the EAT factors, authority, trustworthiness. Those factors have become very important in the health brands that we work with, and making sure that medically reviewed content is a priority for those type of brands.
So I would say the one that you mentioned around thin content. So the first time for me that tactic, or that I had seen somebody really publicize it, and not to say that it's the first time it was used, was Brittany Mueller, when she no-indexed a lot of Moz content, and it actually led to a net benefit for the site in terms of traffic, with the idea that the authority, hate to use that term, but the authority of the site, when you take out all of the low quality content, is then redistributed. And it's kind of a way, I don't want to say page rank sculpting, right? Because that's a very, very old and stale tactic that was used, I believe, in the early 2000s. But I think the idea is the same, is to make sure that the equity is flowing correctly to all of the pages that it should, and that those low quality pages are just completely filtered and ferreted out, because they shouldn't be there. They don't provide value to users. So all of that is to say that I did a similar thing at startups.co, where I just came from before I worked at Search Discovery. And the only time I've ever seen a site that I've worked on hit with an algorithm update on my watch happened at startups. Now, luckily, it wasn't like bad, but we were building and growing traffic, and we had instituted a lot of technical changes. We revamped our content strategy, but the only problem was there was just so much content on the site, and so much in certain sections of the site, user-generated content, a lot of low-quality articles, that it took me so long to account for all of it and to get my arms around it and to evaluate it all, that by the time we were, I don't know, a year to a year and a half into the strategy, I was like, okay, I had kept pushing it back. I'll deal with those later. We got more important fish to fry. And then Google flipped the switch on an algorithm update, and the progress that I had made over the course of a year, it went all back to where I had started. Now, I was like, well, I didn't do anything. I know that I'm doing the right thing. And one of the big things that I changed in terms of, all right, let's start getting real. What do I need to clean up? It was to clean up any page that I felt like was low quality, cut it. No index it. We had a lot of canonicalization issues causing duplicate content. So basically, we cleaned up a lot of really low quality and duplicative content and did nothing really different otherwise. And literally the day before my last day there, and we had started growing again, Google flipped the switch on another algorithm update, and I have a strong suspicion that maybe they adjusted us down a little bit farther than we should have been. The Google flipped the switch on another algorithm update, and things shot through the roof, and we were breaking records again. And I've been out of that job for 6 months, and every month since the month I left, they've set a new organic traffic record. So,
isn't that the kicker, Jake?
Yeah.
You
Well, that's
know?
good. It just means that like the work that I did still paying off for them.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I want anybody listening to know that might be in SEO or might be thinking about SEO tactics. I've never seen, with the exception of one instance, I've never seen an immediate payoff from SEO. It is not a 1 week, 1 month, sometimes 1 quarter payoff from doing a lot of these things. There was the one case that I could have been the snake oil salesman and I could have been that cheesy guy that everybody hates, that somebody came to me and said, Matt, we just launched this new website. We can't figure out, there's been a lot of people looking at it. We can't figure out what's wrong, what's going on. It was a beautiful redesign. It was a terrific navigation, great, nothing that was technologically, too JavaScripty, too Angular or anything. Beautiful implementation. What's one of the first 3 or 4 things you look at it as an audit when you hear something like things drop through the bottom? You're like, okay, well, is it a funky technology implementation? Is it like frames or something? No. Okay, well, let's go to the robot subtext and start there. Robot subtext, disallow star. Crap. Disallow star. So I could keep this person on the phone, bullshit them for an hour about what might be wrong, and say, let's get you an account for 6 months and, really sell them this. And then in the middle, somewhere in the first or second month, throw that file up there as an update and be like, oh, we're just going to make this a best practice to update it. And the flow of traffic would just like crush and it'd be terrific. I didn't do it. On the sales call, I said, I've already immediately found your problem. Your developer left in this file of disallowing robots by default, and you just need to make this one change and your website's going to come back to life. So a week later, they changed it the next day, and a week later, they called me back and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe how much you saved us. You really helped us out. Right. I'm so sorry we're not going to be a client of yours, but thank you so much. And I want to dispel that snake oil salesman of SEO portion back then, and I hope that helped to do it for whoever was on the other side of the phone. Right.
And I remember, gosh, if you do anything, don't screw up your robots file. Teach your developers about the robots file. I saved a very well-known client by just so happening upon an update that they made to their robots file. Thank you to SEO Radar, great tool for monitoring. Saw that they had put a robots file on some very, very important pages and caught it. They probably lost some money, but caught it before they lost literally millions, because if they had had it up for any amount of time, they would have lost millions of dollars. So luckily I was there in that particular case for the save. But one thing I would say in terms of the time that it takes, I saw somebody, I think it was like maybe John Doherty of Credo, or maybe Sire, I can't remember exactly who said it, but I thought that they really did a great job of putting into perspective the situation that a lot of sites face when they begin to entertain SEO and think about the timeline. And when you start SEO, if you've never done it before, or even if you've done it, the site is just suffering under the weight of every single thing that is going on content-wise, technology-wise, so on and so forth. So the reason that it takes so long is, and the reason that it's so hard to tie little changes to impact, like some people want to know, what's the impact of making that alt tag update? Well, it's really freaking hard to tell you. What's the impact of having that change to the title tag on that one page or that template? And sometimes it's really, really difficult, but the cumulative effect is almost akin to turning around a very large ship. And at first, because you're suffering under the weight of everything that has happened historically, it takes a long time to turn. And there's a lot of things that go on there. But once it starts to turn and it starts to snowball and it starts to grow, that's when SEO really starts coming to life. But it takes a long time due to a number of factors. And it takes the cumulative effect of a lot of small things and some big things to add up to success. And it's a lot of small pieces to the puzzle that by themselves aren't very impactful. But when you add them all together, and start doing them in sequence and show a search engine that you're starting to do things the right way. You're turning around a ship. Ships don't turn on a dime, right? That's when things start to come to life.
Absolutely agree with you.
Failures. Tell me about some failures.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate in my career that I don't think I've had a lot of failures. I've heard about some of your client fails that you guys have had. I don't think I had a client fail, but I did have one. So at that very first company out of school, we were doing a server migration. Now, keep in mind that this is the back in the day of 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. I was a software and front-end and back-end and design and database guy. I was not a hardware connectivity networking kind of guy. And for some reason, I had been entrusted with the move of the web service from one box to the next box of an upgrade at a local service provider, an internet service provider. And I took for granted that the database of client material that I had stored as a backup on the USB drive that I was using at the time that had actually been actually stored to the drive, and that the file transfer was going to go perfectly fine from the old server to the new server. And so I had already started to, in my own mind, secure the server to make sure if it got into the wrong hands, I was starting to delete core files and content and database of clientele material. And little did I know, when the new server booted up, it was almost like a blank slate. None of the material had made it over to the new server. And I had already deleted the database on the other old server. So I was literally sitting there with 2 blank servers of no backup of data because the USB drive didn't properly save it either. So first rule is make sure you've got a backup of your backup and you know that it functions. The second rule is, thank God for my friend Dan, who does local networking and IT tech support, and had one of those data recovery systems that goes onto the disk and finds the portion of the disk where the file used to survive and makes that come back to life. Those data forensic files and services. Thank God for him. We're friends today. Just attended his Super Bowl party, and we've been friends for a while. I really appreciate the Dan Carroll, Monmouth Computers, great tech support guy, saved my ass. And I still have jobs today because of him helping me. So you don't have to stay in your lane, but if you're not a specialist at what is about to happen, check out, admit it. Because I was young and I thought I could handle it. And it could have been a holy crap company down the drain moment that I got bailed out from.
Yeah, I always say it's okay to not know things. It's okay to not know things. And I've seen people back themselves into a corner by pretending that they knew stuff that they didn't know. And it's okay to say, let me just go find that out if you don't know the answer to something, right?
Absolutely.
Agency versus in-house. You've done both. Which do you like?
Oh, man.
Better, I should say.
Yeah. Oh, I like them all, Jake. Man, that's a great question. I have to go 50-50 split. I'm not going to make a definitive answer, not just because of my job career and my availability for being hired in the future, but there's bonuses to both. There's the diversity of clientele at the agency and enterprise level clients, and having great budgets and being able to work with diverse teams around you and specialists in those areas. And going brand side, having the internal insight and trust of the team to be able to prioritize work and have instant access to the things that you need. Agency side, I had a whole bunch of tools and the ears of the experts in the industry informing us. Whereas brand side, I can be that subject matter expert, still listen to the brand, still listen to speakers in the industry, and kind of evaluate what is the effort versus impact internally that I can prioritize and really get things done. Whereas I think agency side, we were selling a lot of cool ideas and hoping that they worked out. And they usually did. That was what was great. I did go through deck withdrawal for the first 2 weeks of going brand side after being in an agency for almost 8 years. I didn't create like a deck on why this thing needed to be done for almost like a month.
Yeah.
And I was like, PowerPoint used to be my friend. Now it's not.
Yeah, I do remember when I went in-house at startups, one of their first comments to me was, if you bring a PowerPoint deck to any of our meetings, we're going to laugh you out of the room. They weren't joking. But unfortunately, with some ideas, like, you've got to organize your thoughts somewhere. So like sometimes I had to do that. So let me take that last question from a different angle. And this is, I think, where it cuts a little bit more personally, which is what I want to get into with this type of a podcast. It cuts into life, right? So you're a family man. You've got kids, 2 kids, same age as me. You got almost 6-year-old. I have an almost 6-year-old. You've got a 3-year-old, boy and a girl. And agency world, you did quite a bit of traveling. Now, I believe you still do the commute from New Jersey to, I believe it's New York still, right?
I took that plunge.
Yeah. So you do still have a commute, but I know that you had a bigger commute and you did a lot of traveling. How does that affect the home life, man? How hard is that to balance?
Yeah, my LinkedIn profile and my interviewing, what I was looking for changed dramatically in a matter of 3 or 4 years, where I could still be married, have my wife. Maybe she would even travel with me to those places. But as we had kids and as family became more of an important thing, to be at after school activities and help out with homework, and not leave in the morning and the kids were still asleep and come back at night and the kids were going to sleep or already asleep. That is a huge priority for me. I can't have that happen. It would tear me apart. I love my family too much. And to hear when I open the door at 6:30 or 7 o'clock when I get home from work, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, Daddy, stop. Yep. Right? You can have a dog that comes running to you and jumps all over you, but the kids do that. And it's just like a little piece of you grows inside and gets warm and happy, even if you have to change a diaper right when you get home.
A little bit more each time, too.
Absolutely. And you're so proud of their accomplishments because they want to show you their accomplishments, even if it's we pooped in the potty today. So yes, I've gotten very lucky where over the years I've had more and more understanding management teams above me and horizontally that understand that family life is a priority. And I was the young guy when I was at my first agency, where I was young and I was traveling all the time. I was on the road. I was doing road shows. I was doing conventions. I was doing expos, and I wanted to do all that stuff. And we went to California. We drove to Florida because we couldn't take a flight because we were hosting our conference. Our flight got canceled, and we took that damn road trip to Florida to host our conference. It was from Jersey to Florida. That's a road trip. But now I've, some of the prerequisites for working have been, what's the work from home option? What's the life family work home mix that you guys expect? And I've declined positions over the last couple of years because that wasn't going to be the right setting and the right opportunity for me in those priorities. So it's become completely different over the last 5 years. Than the previous 15.
So let me take it a step farther. So I only know this story because I worked directly with you when this happened. I can only imagine how you felt about it. But when your son was born, he was born with I believe it was the heart defect. What was that like? Explain that situation.
So supraventricular tachycardia, SVT. My mom's a nurse, my dad's a pharmacist, so I grew up hearing medical things, and I'm very versed in medical things. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I'm the medical person. I'm the nurse in the family when it comes to that. I'd never heard of it. Apparently it was rather common, 1 in couple thousand or 10,000. Don't quote me on medical statistics. Disclaimer. That my son, when he was born, his heart rate, a normal heart rate of a baby and an infant should be somewhere around 130, 150, somewhere more or less of those beats a minute. After we had him home for 3 or 4 days, he stopped feeding, and we went to the ER, and he was doing 300 beats a minute. And so his heart was, from a programmer point of view, his heart was in an infinite loop. It couldn't break out of this electrical signal that was going around and around. And they tried a hard stop where they gave him a drug that hard stopped his heart, paused it for a couple seconds, and it goes back in. And it's supposed to break it out of that rhythm, and it didn't. It would go back in and back in and back in. So they did that 10 or 12 times, which is an extreme amount of recommendation for that. I think it's called adenosine if you're medically oriented. Anyways. And they quickly escalated it from the regional trauma location that we were at that had a pediatric specialty division in the ER and specialists for cardiac, pediatric cardiology. They escalated it to the East Coast region facility, which is CHOP, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And they said, we're going to fly you out. So it went from not feeding overnight to in the ER in the morning to being there for a couple of hours to hoping he normalizes and doesn't. And we want to fly you in a helicopter, medevac you to Philadelphia in a matter of like hours. We were like, holy shit. I was very lucky that the team at the agency at Rosetta Razorfish, and you know, there were people that also had kids, also had families that understood that I needed to take time away from my family and drop everything else. And I was not out of office. I was disconnected.
It was so scary.
Oh, absolutely. Freaked us out. So we were in the Ronald McDonald room at CHOP. We still donate every year around the time that he was in there for about 5 days. He eventually normalized on a specialized regimen. Ironically, interestingly enough, he was the healthiest baby in there. He was a chunky, happy baby, but he just had an electrical system that was going the wrong way. He's been free and clear of that for 2.5 years now. I still keep my one hand in the pocket where the stethoscope is, and I feel his chest, and I listen to his heart without him knowing that he's asleep at night, to make sure that it's not going a million miles an hour. But he'd have other signs, and he'd have other symptoms, but it's still on my mind every minute. But family is absolutely the priority. Relationship and family is the priority. And digital marketing can come second. I think you quoted Brian Dean, one of our friends in the industry.
I did. I quoted him again today at work. He doesn't even know how often he's come up on this podcast. And it's not the Brian Dean that everybody knows in the industry. It's the Brian Dean that we work with, who's awesome.
Awesome.
And not that the other Brian Dean isn't awesome, but this guy is a different non-SEO Brian Dean.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not doing brain surgery, heart surgeries, where that could have come down to for me. We're not on the operating table. We're not in the ER. We're doing digital marketing. We have large brands behind us, and it's okay to make a slip up. It's okay to not have a priority of launching that piece of content right at midnight. I mean, you know, you can let somebody else know to cover for you, and they'll understand. We're humans. We're human beings together, and we need to support each other and not prioritize work over family or relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always, I don't know if I've said it on this podcast, but I know something I say to myself, and it's something I've said to a few other people, and I can't remember where I heard it. When you're on your deathbed, and I think about this more acutely because I have somebody that I've known, not closely, that passed away recently, and I think about it a lot. I can only imagine when I'm on my deathbed, I certainly won't be wishing that I worked more. And I love my job. I do love my job, but I won't be wishing that I worked more. I'll be thinking about family and friends and, you know, all of the stuff that is really, really important. That's the stuff that matters. And, you know, I can drive traffic to all of the sites in the world, right? And it doesn't really matter unless the family and the friendships and those types of things are there behind it all. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yep. And it's not easy to work when you're distracted by those things, when those things are not going well. And you get fortunate enough to work in the industry with people that understand that.
Right.
And I love that about the people.
So, you had a bit of, you had your reprieve, but eventually you had to come back, right? But that was still like in the back of your mind, and it probably has not left since then. Like, how have you been able to like focus and still be functional?
It's trusting that he's doing better and that the doctors have it under control and that they're specialists in their areas, and I have to let nature and the doctors take their course, whereas I get back into my daily swing of things, and that I have a team that supports me just as if I would support them. If they had a crisis or an emergency, you go and you deal with that. That is a priority. Get off the phone, stop answering that email at 7:30. It's your personal life, and you need to make that separation. I am a huge advocate of that separation of work and home life, now that my work and home life is completely different, and I'm not going to ask anybody else to operate in a different fashion. It's up to you if you want to work after hours or check your email in bed and respond, but keep in mind you're setting a precedent. If you keep doing that, people are going to continue to expect it from you.
Right.
And you have to draw a line in the sand. And I've like I said, I declined a couple of positions that said, no, actually, our company culture is that you need to be in New York City 5 days a week, 8:30 to 5:30 or 6. And I said, that company culture won't fit into...
Plus your 2-hour train ride, either way.
Well, I have to say, go family, go team. We moved in October, and now we're only an hour and a half, hour and 45. Yes. But I appreciate that my peers and my managers, the people above me in leadership, are sympathetic to this type of lifestyle that I've set out from the start that I needed to have happen for me and what's right for them as well. And I have to make sure I deliver, though. I can't be slacking off. I can't not answer work from home Fridays. I can't, the kids are on my lap, but yeah, I'm answering emails and making sure I'm doing work.
So let me ask you one more, I guess more of a personal question. And this is more parent to parent, right? In this age where people, kids, everybody's on their phones, everybody's on their tablets, everybody's consuming media at all times and distracted. You're coming home on the train, you're listening to a podcast, I know I personally, like when I wake up in the morning or when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about work, thinking about the strategy that I'm going to implement. And sometimes people forget to be present in the moment. When they're present in the moment, when your kids are talking to you, or when you're at dinner, or when you're just spending time with your family, not on your phone. How do you maintain being present so that you can be there for your family? And how do you mentally turn it off? Because you can be home, but be a million miles away thinking about work and thinking about strategy and every other thing that you've got going on. How do you turn it off?
I actually have a very good example of being thousands of miles away from work. So for those of you that don't know, my wife is Brazilian, and we attempt to make the pilgrimage once a year, as we've been fortunate enough to do so, to travel down to Brazil for about 2 weeks. And that's another pre-existing condition that I have.
Right.
When I take on a job, I'm like, look, I'm going to be out and honest and open. I don't want you guys to come as a surprise. My wife's from Brazil. We go and visit her family. We really enjoy it. I'm there for 2.5 weeks. Mm-hmm. If that's a problem for me working remote for a week and a half or taking 5 days in a row, we're just not going to work out. But for the screen time and the constant connectivity, I love the proposal that's coming out of France. I believe that the work cannot hold you accountable for checking emails after hours, even if you're on a salary position. I think it's interesting, and I would love to see how that affects Publicis in the future, being a French company.
Right.
Good luck, agency world. But we've found as our children have gotten older, like my son, when he became old enough to walk and move and be able to reach over to get to a pad or a phone, and he's adopted technology so quickly, he tried to swipe the TV, the big 65-inch TV on the wall. And I was like, whoa, don't do that. In the last couple of months, we've tried to cut down on screen time. They've become addicted to it. You've mentioned in the past.
Sometimes it's easy to fall into as a parent. Like, hey, you need your own personal time. Go watch my phone. Don't bother.
Oh, take daddy's phone. Or we have 2 kids' tablets from Amazon Fire tablets that have the soft surrounds on them. And if you want to have a warm meal with more than 2 consecutive bites at a restaurant that you're paying, $25-$30 a plate for, you're probably dropping that pad on your kid. But we're trying not to. We're trying not to.
It's hard.
They get addicted and grumpy from it.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. I've personally been finding myself, I'm trying to disconnect. I do have a pet peeve. When we go on vacation, my wife is the documenter of the vacation because she's taking pictures constantly.
That's me.
She's doing videos, which is great. I have a huge pet peeve of people that can't experience the moment without having that screen between them.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're taking pictures, where they're taking videos. I hate the going to a concert and everybody's taking pictures constantly or videos.
Instead of watching the actual concert and taking
it. Be there. Like, we went to Andrea Bocelli in New York City at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Okay.
Amazing. Of course, you're not supposed to videotape, but a lot of people are out there taking pictures, videotaping, whatever. And I'm just like, take it in.
Mm-hmm.
The sight, the sounds, the feeling, the energy around you. Don't let it be recorded, because there are 50,000 other people that are recording this right now. And be you in the moment and record it in your mind naturally, like you used to.
Yeah.
Taking the smells and the sights and the sounds. And don't. It's great that you want to share it with people, but you want it to be yours too. And that is a pet peeve I have that my wife fully knows and acknowledges. She's like, you don't have any pictures of the kids or any pictures of the vacation. I'm like, yeah, but I've got them up here. I remember what we did. I will give shout out to parents that go to Disney. I think you've made the pilgrimage. Have you?
Just me. We didn't do the big week-long trip, but we did one day, and it was brutal.
Oh, well,
So
we were fortunate enough to go for like 4 or 5 days, and we did do the middle, take a day off. We did the photo package. So we didn't have to bring a camera or pull out our phones pretty much at any time that was a photo moment. And it was worth the whatever I think we paid for. It might have been $150 over the 5 days. That instead of being annoyed by the photo takers, hey, can I stop and take your picture? You're seeking those people out. Those people now have lines stacked up because they're in the most photogenic locations, and they've got a great focus. And that photo that they just took, those 10, 20 shots, are great, well lit, and they're uploaded to the cloud from their pocket in about 5 minutes. And you can see them in the app on the phone, and then you get them when you get home, and you can download them all and turn them into a calendar. It's an ingenious, cutting-edge technology thing that I think Disney cornered and did an amazing job on. I recommend it if you're that dad or that mom that wants a lot of pictures but doesn't take, maybe doesn't have the phone for it or doesn't want to be bothered with pulling it out every time or carrying around a great camera. Highly recommend that.
Let me tell you about my experience with Disney.
Tell me.
Don't get me wrong. It was a great day, and it was hot. And we had a couple of whiny kids because it was so hot. But there were a lot of really good things that they do and that they did. Their app was so awesome. Get the Fast Pass. Please, God, get the Fast Pass, especially if you have kids. Plan your meals. You almost have to plan your meals. Like, you've got to book them well months in advance if you want to get in anywhere to eat. But the thing I will say that was the most lasting memory for me, and unfortunately it was a little negative, was at the end of the night they do fireworks, and they have certain sections that they tape off. And if you are not in one of those sections, you could be an inch outside of it. They will scream in your face and tell you to get the hell out or we're kicking you out, even if you've got a crying baby in your arms, which we did. So like we literally, and people are literally squeezed in and nobody's moving. Luckily we found a spot, but they were going to kick us out right at the most magical moment of the night. So not so great, Disney. I've got a bone to pick with Disney about that, but otherwise it was a good day. Biggest mentor. Who is your biggest mentor coming up?
So I am going to say that it is Brian Pash. He was the gentleman who approached me that I thought was the snake oil salesman, but he was just a very smart marketer. And he is the guy that I credit toward all of the scope creep that has ever happened to me, that I've ever done to anyone, where I'm not thinking about, I think about effort and impact and prioritization of work, but I'm always thinking about the fourth, fifth, and sixth step of how this ties back into a general digital marketing plan. And that can get under people's skin because they want to just get this thing done. But I like to make the big plans and the longer term strategy. Brian was one of those on caffeine, amazing digital marketers that I got to early on in my career that always encouraged that kind of thinking, and brought me out of my shell as well. At no point in time did I ever desire, and even to this day, much like your interview with Rand, do I desire to be on stage. But it happens that, you know, if I have to teach or I have to present, I do well, I do okay. But then if I'm in that industry cocktail hour of, you know, everybody's at the high top tables, everybody's got a drink or two, I'm probably not the guy seeking out the group of people pitching. I'm not the guy that wants to be in and out of Salesforce and calling on people and individuals. And I can't be that. I am an people think of me as the extrovert. They call me the mayor of the office. And I get it from my dad, right? I get it from my dad because they call him the senator, apparently, at his offices. Right. And I didn't know that until recent years. And it's tough for my dad to walk through a large airport and not catch somebody that he knows or make a friend. But the same thing happens to me. I think it's because it's the evangelization of the SEO craft that needs to occur at all points of digital marketing creation. That if you don't get in, something's going to go wrong that you have to backtrack on.
Yep.
Or you want to make it better. So I think Brian Pash, in the industry-wide, I have not heard one person say this yet. I don't know if I haven't listened to enough of your material yet. Matt Cutts.
Right.
Come on. Let's give a shout out to the OG SEO himself.
That's right.
If he was not confirming these pieces of bits that we all suspected were best practices, a lot of us may have strayed away from the industry or not continued to do best practices. Shout out to Gary Isles and Danny Sullivan for recently trying to take over those roles and communicate.
John Mueller. Yeah.
John Mueller especially, he actually had an answer that drove a change for one of our sites and our teams about user-generated content that actually produced results 6 months later.
Yeah.
Again, one of those things where you make a switch and you're like, I hope this works when a new algorithm comes across. And it did.
Yeah.
So
that was the original version of what those people do. And I don't think he gets a lot of credit anymore, right? I think people have almost forgotten about his contribution to the industry, but he was so freaking nice and he took so much heat. He was such a great face for the industry, and I'm amazed that he stuck with it as long as he did, because SEOs can be a wicked bunch of people in terms of eating their young. So
they can be very vicious. I mean,
assholes sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The very vicious SEOs that are out in the world, like, I did this and this and this, why isn't my website better? Like general digital marketers sometimes that think that they employed a digital strategy that is correct, but you sometimes have to wait for that algorithm update to come around. It's not going to happen no matter how well you did, how many backlinks you built, how much quality content you put out. There's going to be some sort of a cadence eventually that does come around that your website will hopefully pop against. And I've experienced that. I'd like to caution people toward that. But I think that's my general background. For keeping a general mind on all marketing and pitch-wise, understanding like where a brand comes from that background, not doing an audit and coming in and pitching what your audit findings were, but relating it back to the general brand and the overall goals of a company. Was working with Steve Pitts. I actually hadn't experienced that kind of work. Steve Pitts, the former head of SEO of the craft at Razorfish Rosetta Sapient, now inhouse. he was influential in my deck creation, the way that I approach that pretty frequently.
Mine as well. Yeah, I'm at some point. Maybe it'll come before your episode. Maybe it'll come after your episode. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to fit in my own personal monologue and personal story. But if I had to name a mentor, he would definitely be on that list as well. But eventually, I'm going to do my own story. Just not exactly sure when I am going to take the time to lock myself in my office and talk to myself for an hour.
Well, you need to do so. You have to have somebody interview you. You got to flip.
Right. Okay, so few more questions. Favorite tactic, favorite tools, favorite resources. You can do one or many, like tactics, tools, resources. Like, what do you like to do? What do you like to do it with?
Okay. The thing that's worked most recently for me over the last 2 years, being at large publishers, is exactly what we talked about earlier. Using a crawler, deep crawl, or screaming frog spider to identify low value, thin content, orphaned pages, a lot of technical accessibility and or quality related items. And they're definitive items as well. These pages are not in a crawl of the site, even though they're in Search Console, or they're in your analytics, or they're in your XML. We know these are best practices, that the pages should be found through crawling the website. Fix it. Fix the pagination or the hierarchy or something.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, like identifying thin content, is easy. It's a page size item. It's number of words on a page, and the lack of traffic that page is getting. So finding those is pretty easy, but finding low quality is sometimes a matter of opinion, but usually, it could be subjective, but if you break it down as a numbers guy, you got access to analytics and Search Console. If it's not getting play, if it's been a while since you touched it, it's not getting traffic, and it's not getting, keeping in mind, we're not the only channel, right? So if it's not getting recirculation and traffic, it's not getting referral traffic, it's not getting internal link traffic, it's not getting traffic from social when you play it out on social channels, maybe that topic or that piece is dead. Mm-hmm. And that site section is dead. And you should think about chucking it, 410ing it. We had some success with 410 recently. Over the last year of some very old
people that don't know what you're talking about, you might be speaking Greek. What's a 410?
So you probably know in the industry what a 404 is, a file not found.
There you go.
Right, you're not redirecting a page after it died. The server is actually giving an error saying, I didn't find what you're looking for. A 410 is similar to a 404 where the page is not found, but you've purposefully said that URL is gone from my website. You've not just said that the server couldn't find it for some reason and it's an odd thing to happen. You've actually set it up so that this list of URLs generates a server response code in a technical sense back to the web browser that says, not only did you not find the page, I've purposefully taken that page away from this server. It is gone.
It's never coming back.
Yeah, it is not coming back. Now, have I found success between 404 and 410? I don't know. We haven't tested it to that point. But we did know that we found such low quality and such long age on this UGC that we cut it out completely and did a 410. And we saw upon the next, I don't know, we did like 10 other things, so it's kind of hard to tell. But upon the next algorithm update, there was a huge boost to the core content of the website. It was like, keeping in mind, 100% does not happen overnight. It jumped 25 or 30% in a week's time. And since that time, 4 months later, it is now up 80% year over year. That is the kind of incremental growth you like to see when you think you're doing everything right.
So on big websites, does a small change drive a big impact? That's something we've talked about. Like the bigger the website, the smaller the change that can drive a big impact.
Depending on scaling, yes. If you're in a publishing environment and 90% of your website, of your 100,000 URLs, is the article template, guess what you should probably be touching? The article template, making sure that's terrific. And then the hierarchy that it supports it. So yes, like pagination. Some of the teams have used JavaScript pagination, where they're actively writing where the page is, or the page dynamically refreshes in an Ajax environment when they're paginating. and it pushes a new URL to the browser, but it's not in a way that a standard crawler would be able to discover and follow that pagination. You're creating orphaned pages because search engines and crawlers can't find them. So a lot of technical stuff, and I'm going to credit it back to a deep crawl or a search spider, the SEO spider.
Yeah. So what other tools? You mentioned deep crawl a couple of times, a little bit of Screaming Frog, some Search Console. What other tools do you like to use?
I
recommend.
Okay, so deep crawl, Ahrefs.
Love it.
Yes, I know. I've been hearing you've been coming on board with that idea.
Right.
But Jake, I will completely support you that until I had this role at Ziff Davis, I almost never touched Ahrefs. It is the custom content that the team has gotten by creating internal homegrown tools to analyze the data we get out of that, to actually make better sense of it and use it better. Right. Striking distance and content gap analysis is what we've been using it for.
Yep.
So deep crawl, Ahrefs, search metrics. I wish we had a continued budget to use their content optimization tools at Search Metrics. It's an individual brand decision to use those kind of tools. We can't support it at the parent level for everyone because who knows if they're actually going to use it or not. But when I've used their content analysis tool, okay, this is a guide on routers. It'll go out, you pick 5 keywords, it'll go out to those 5 keywords in their top 10 ranking pages, do almost like a word cloud analysis of what's on the rest of the topics of those pages and what are you missing in your article that should also be included as a subtopic that all these other articles that are winning are also ranking for it. So it's almost like a similar topics keyword expansion for this one page that would help you grow in your opportunity for traffic. I loved SEO Radar when we were at the agency level because you didn't have your pulse on. As an internal person, I know a lot more about when things are changing to sites. You get release updates. You get, the dev team has a little celebration. They're having beers in the back because they pushed something. But you don't get that when you're at the agency and disconnected.
You find out after the fact.
Yeah, and something broke. And why is SEO down 30% week over week, Matt? And you're like, I don't know. What did you guys touch? Yeah. Because I didn't touch it. SEO Radar was saving our butts a lot when we were at the agency level. I do love Google Analytics. I do love Data Studio. I've got to present to C-suite teams, and they are not going to understand an Excel sheet or my gobbledygook of SEO. I have to put it into dollar signs and up and to the right.
Yep. Up
and to the right. And you can't get too technical. You got to break it down into how it drives back to revenue and company goals. So I use those kind of tools on a daily basis. You got to be an Excel whiz if you want to excel past the associate into the manager level and director level.
Right. I agree with that. And I wish somebody had told me to learn Excel earlier in my career. It could have saved me a lot of time. Best advice for somebody that is getting into SEO in 2019?
Diversity of skill sets if you want to both serve yourself and your client as best as you can. Don't pigeonhole yourself to SEO, only technical, only content if you want to see self-growth in the industry, at your agency, at your company, or in your future. You can be a one-trick pony and you can do it really well, but it limits there's a glass ceiling once you get pigeonholed as the tech SEO or the content SEO. You got to be more of a big picture strategy person. And I think like we've been talking about the whole time, tie it all back to the client's needs and goals. You're not just SEO, you're a channel in which they're getting their message, their brand, their product in front of someone. And so don't just think of yourself in that way. Think of how you can amplify the work that others are doing and also fit the needs of what your channel needs to get done. So diversify and always be learning. If you're not always learning in SEO, you're dead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Gotta always be learning and keeping up with news.
What is it, like a shark always has to stay swimming, right? We're the sharks. Gotta always stay swimming if you want to be the big shark.
Absolutely. So diversify your skill set. Be curious. Don't be afraid to do a lot of research and homework. Don't be afraid that you're not an expert in one particular section or kind of SEO or subject matter. Seek out those individuals to educate yourself. There's so much to learn now, whereas when you and I were coming up in this stuff, it was a lot of trial and error, see what's working, pull it apart yourself.
Lose your pride, too. Don't be afraid to ask.
I absolutely
be afraid to ask.
I Google stuff on a daily basis still.
Yeah, sometimes that's how I am able to give somebody an answer to a question. So, one, thank you for staying on this long. One of my probably longer interviews, I would say. No, that's great. A lot of good conversation. But I as a family man myself, I know like what this is probably going to do to your tomorrow. You're probably going to go in with red eyes because you stayed up and talked to me for an hour and a half at 10 o'clock at night. So I fully appreciate that. And where can the audience find you? If they want to look up Mr. Matt Osuch and connect with you, where can they find you?
I'm easily discoverable on LinkedIn and Twitter. I believe my handle on LinkedIn is just /Matthew.Osuch. My Twitter account is @MDOsuch, which is OSUCH. And I used to have like a video channel on YouTube. I don't do it anymore. That's about it. I mean, I willfully will accept your your messages and your friends and shares and likes on LinkedIn. I have no shame on LinkedIn, apparently. I have a large amount of people that I just hit yes to. But I'm always looking to educate and help individuals in the industry, whether you're up and coming or you're experienced individual. I mean, it's exciting. I can't believe I still get paid to do this, Jake.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it's fun and exciting for me every day.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I tell my story, for me, it was such a weird path to what I'm doing today. And I'm thankful every day because I didn't, not like you can go to school for this. It's not like when I grew up in elementary school, I want to do SEO. Flamed out in a lot of other things, but luckily caught on with this and it's become a career, and couldn't be more thankful. Think about that a lot.
Agree.
Yeah. Cool, man. So, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here, Jake. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Awesome. Thanks, man.